Dramatic before and after images showed the apocalyptic devastation to Los Angeles caused by the still raging wildfires. The Palisades fire, devastating the upscale Pacific Palisades neighborhood, and the Eaton fire to the east have already consumed more than 34,000 acres. The wildfires have killed at least 10 people, a number officials said was expected to grow. But LA Fire Chief Kristen Crowley told reporters on Friday that a pause in the fierce winds was helping crews make progress in controlling the infernos, which were so large they could be seen from the International Space Station.
The Palisades fire is now 8% contained. Wind gusts are expected to increase in daylight hours that will test our containment lines. Our firefighters will continue to respond to any flare-ups and increase our containment lines.
The fires have so far destroyed some 10,000 structures.
Yeah, it's been a tough time.
Kelly Foster lost her Pacific Palisades home. She returned with her family on Thursday to survey the damage.
I mean, this was a house that was loved, and I think that's when I first came to the house today, I just started bawling, and it's almost like I personified my house, and I'm like, I hope you didn't hurt. I hope this didn't hurt. I hope this didn't hurt.
AccuWeather's chief meteorologist, Jonathan Porter, said the devastation amounted to California's most costly fires.
AccuWeather's preliminary estimate for total damage and economic loss from the fast-moving, wind-driven infernos in Southern California is $135 to $150 billion in total damage and economic loss, a truly staggering number.
Meanwhile, California National Guard troops were patrolling some neighborhoods amid reports of looting. And a curfew was imposed in mandatory evacuation zones. Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman.
Looting is a despicable crime. For the people who've already been arrested, please know that this is not going to end well.
Wind conditions are expected to improve this weekend, which would allow for more crucial aerial support on the flaming hills. But strong gusts returning next week could resuscitate the flames.
We have much more of this climate whiplash sort of phenomenon where we have very, very wet years followed by very dry years. And that is in and of itself very problematic because it creates more susceptibility in places that didn't used to be quite so high risk. Well, the reality is that we have urban water systems that are not designed to fight wildfires or put out entire sort of, mountainsides that are on fire. And we are having, very high severity events that are unprecedented. We had extremely wet winters in 2023 and 24, which encouraged a lot of vegetative growth. And then followed by an unprecedentedly dry few months. And then the third component, of course, was these ferocious winds. And so literally sort of a perfect firestorm of factors that came together to create an extreme demand for water in a very short amount of time.
Actresses, very famous people are clearing out their closets and bringing them here. That is what you're seeing. It is a community who will do anything to help. And then when the community we have victims coming in here, bursting into tears, getting hugs, and we're shopping for them and helping them get what they need and bringing it to their house, to wherever they are. I mean, Halle Berry just gave us her closet. Sharon Stone is amplifying this message there's so many. I can't even keep up with the amazing voices that are that are participating and helping.
The world has just experienced the first full year in which global temperatures exceeded 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial times, scientists said on Friday. 2024 saw temperatures rise on every continent, resulting in heat waves, drought, and extreme weather. The milestone was confirmed on Friday by scientists at the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service. They're warning that climate change is pushing the planet's temperatures to levels never experienced by modern humans. Here's Carlo Buontempo, director of the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service.
Every single month, January to July, has been the warmest on record. July was the second warmest, and then from then on has been the second or close to first around. But when you put all of those together, then the trajectory is just incredible and sums up to the warmest year on record.
The planet's average temperature in 2024 was 1.6 degrees Celsius higher than in 1850 to 1900. That's the pre-industrial period before humans began burning CO2-emitting fossil fuels on a large scale. What's more, 2024 was the hottest year since records began, and each of the past 10 years was among the 10 warmest on record. Governments promised under the 2015 Paris Agreement to try and prevent average temperatures exceeding the symbolic threshold of 1.5 degrees to avoid more severe and costly climate disasters. Yet, despite this, the first year above 1.5 degrees does not breach that target, which measures the longer-term average temperature. According to Buontempo, it's not too late for countries to rapidly cut emissions and avoid global warming rising faster, although they need to act fast.
The Paris Agreement will be reached in the near future. We can discuss whether it will be the late 2020s, early 2030s, but we are bound to reach 1.5 in the terms of the Paris Agreement and exceed it. It's not a done deal. We have the power to change the trajectory from now on. We can do it, but we need to do it based our actions on facts, on evidence, and there are plenty of evidence available that we can base our actions on.
The impacts of climate change are now visible on every continent, affecting people from the richest to the poorest countries on Earth. It is worsening storms and torrential rainfall because a hotter atmosphere can hold more water, leading to intense downpours. But as the costs of these disasters spiral, political will to invest in curbing emissions has waned in some countries. US President-elect Donald Trump, who takes office on the 20th of January, has called climate change a hoax, despite global scientific consensus that it is human-caused and will have severe consequences if not addressed.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was sworn in for a third term on Friday, despite a months-long election dispute and international calls for him to stand aside. Maduro's nearly 12 years in power have been marked by deep economic and social crisis. He was declared the winner of last year's election by both Venezuela's electoral authority and top court, though detailed tallies confirming his victory have never been published.
Esta constitución está victoriosa y Venezuela está en paz.
This constitution is victorious and Venezuela is at peace. This act is possible because Venezuela is at peace, fully exercising its national sovereignty, its popular sovereignty, and its national independence.
International election observers said the vote was not democratic. The country's opposition says ballot box level tallies from the July vote show a landslide win for its former candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, who fled the country afterwards. His ally, Maria Corina Machado, went into hiding in Venezuela, and high-profile opposition figures and protesters have been detained. Gonzalez, who has been on a whistle-stop tour of the Americas this week, is recognized as president-elect by several countries, including the U.S. Gonzalez has said he will return to Venezuela to take up the mantle of president. But Machado on Friday said that his return to the country would have to wait.
Edmundo vendrá a Venezuela.
Edmundo will come to Venezuela to be sworn in as constitutional president of Venezuela at the right time when the conditions are right.
Cuando las condiciones sean las adecuadas.
The outgoing Biden administration increased its reward to $25 million for information leading to the arrest or conviction of Maduro on drug trafficking charges. Maduro has rejected the accusations. Maduro and his aides have always rejected sanctions by the U.S. and others, saying they are illegitimate measures that amount to an economic war designed to cripple Venezuela. He and his allies have cheered what they say is the country's resilience despite the measures, though they have historically blamed some economic hardships and shortages on sanctions.
The bill is passed.
The U.S. House of Representatives has voted to sanction the International Criminal Court. The measure comes in protest after ICC prosecutors issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over Israel's military operations in Gaza.
America is passing this law because a kangaroo court is seeking to arrest the Prime Minister of our great ally, Israel.
Republican Representative Brian Mast of Florida defended the bill.
What the ICC is doing with their arrest warrants is legitimizing the false accusations of Israeli war crimes.
The ICC said it noted the bill with concern. In a statement to Reuters, the ICC said, quote, "The court firmly condemns any and all actions intended to threaten the court and its officials, undermine its judicial independence and its mandate, and deprive millions of victims of international atrocities across the world of justice and hope." In November, ICC judges said there were reasonable grounds to believe Netanyahu and Gallant were criminally responsible for acts including murder, persecution, and starvation as a weapon of war, as part of what the court called a, quote, "widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza." Israel has rejected the jurisdiction of the Hague-based court and denies war crimes in Gaza. The court also issued arrest warrants for a number of leaders of the Palestinian militant group Hamas, which led a surprise attack on Israeli communities on October 7, 2023. Gunmen killed about 1,200 people and took more than 250 hostages back to Gaza, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's retaliation has reduced much of the densely populated coastal enclave to rubble, displaced more than 90% of the population, and killed more than 45,000 people, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. In a House vote on Thursday, the bill titled the, quote, "Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act" passed with 243 voting in favor to 140 opposed. 45 Democrats joined 198 Republicans in backing the bill. No Republican voted against it.
Republicans want to sanction the ICC simply because they don't want the rules to apply to everyone.
Democratic Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts pushed back against the measure.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has an absolute right to defend his people. But there is no international right to vengeance. And what we are seeing in Gaza is vengeance.
The bill's passage was one of the first acts of the newly seated House of Representatives, and it underscored strong support among President-elect Donald Trump's fellow Republicans for Israel's government. Trump's first administration imposed sanctions on the ICC in 2020 in response to investigations into war crimes in Afghanistan, including allegations of torture by U.S. citizens. 5 years ago, then ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda and other staff had credit cards and bank accounts frozen and U.S. travel impeded. Those sanctions were lifted by President Joe Biden's administration. Trump will be sworn in on January 20th for a second term as president.
The Sudanese government's move to introduce new banknotes and compel people to open bank accounts has boosted bank deposits, in turn supporting the army's war effort, Finance Minister Jibril Ibrahim said. The initiative, launched in December, explicitly aimed to make funds looted by the Rapid Support Forces worthless. Critics say it has excluded millions from the financial system, but Ibrahim says it has been a success.
Exchanging banknotes has various goals, one of which is making sure that the stolen money which is accumulated by some entities has no value if it enters the banking system. If they attempt to do so, we will discover them because we ask about the sources of money if there are any suspicions. As a result, it will no longer be effective after the exchange process deadline ends.
Unlike in previous currency exchanges, in order to receive new pound notes, people have to deposit their old notes. They're then allowed to withdraw limited amounts daily. The RSF has called the move illegal and says it's one of the reasons it decided to form a parallel government. Critics say that has rendered millions of people's savings worthless in RSF-controlled areas and deepened Sudan's divide. In Port Sudan, some residents have protested over the new banknotes. Traders say the process has dampened sales, as many people still lack identification papers needed to open a bank account, while others lack smartphones for online transfers. The army's 2-year war with the RSF has devastated the economy. The government has struggled to pay salaries and finance essential goods such as medicine. The currency has lost 3/4 of its value, and half the population has been driven into hunger.
Protesters in Panama burned an effigy of US President-elect Donald Trump on Thursday during a march marking the bloody past of the Panama Canal. Trump has said he wants to take back control of the canal and this week refused to rule out use of military or economic pressure to do it. Panamanians rejected Trump's comments.
Panama has to be sovereign. That was what was said in the treaty. And the canal belongs to the Panamanians. And nobody should come here to interrupt the peace we have in our canal.
Thursday saw hundreds march to mark Martyrs' Day, the anniversary of a deadly uprising in 1964 against American control of the canal. At that time, more than 20 Panamanians and 3 US soldiers died in violent clashes after mass demonstrations against the US presence there and control of the canal. Martyrs' Day is regarded as what paved the way for the eventual transfer of the canal to Panama in 1999. On Thursday, Panama's president, José Raúl Mulino, laid a wreath to remember those who died. He has strongly rejected Trump's threats.
We have a Panamanian canal, complete national sovereignty, which will be maintained, and we will have to fight for it to continue maintaining the canal and our full sovereignty. Nothing and no one can try to diminish this political reality of Panama today in front of the world. Panama is 100% sovereign in its territory, and the canal is and will continue to be Panamanian.
The canal is a key global waterway because it connects the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. The US built and owned the canal before its handover to Panama in 1999. President-elect Trump has criticized the cost of moving goods through the canal and has seemed to warn of Chinese influence in the area.
Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country.
Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison Holdings has long managed 2 ports located on either end of the canal. Panama has strongly rebuked Trump's assertions, and its president said China had no influence on the canal's administration.
She's right to say it's one of the worst scandals. It's terrible. That's why I acted on it. Her recently acquired view that it's a scandal, having spent a lot of time on social media over Christmas, not once in 8 years did she stand here and say what she's just said. Not once in 8 years. They didn't act on the recommendations. They want a national inquiry. We had a national inquiry, the J inquiry, the J report. 20 recommendations, not a single one implemented. Not a single one implemented.
While the honourable member for Clacton may miss out on his big allowance from Elon Musk, the spectre of the richest man in the world trying to buy a British political party should give us all pause for thought. And after years of the Conservatives taking millions of pounds of Russian money, will the Prime Minister now work with us to bring in long overdue reforms of party funding so that power in this country lies with the voters and not wealthy overseas oligarchs?
I think we all had a smile on Sunday when the honourable member said how cool it was to have the support of Musk, only for Musk to say he should be removed. Just a few hours later, that's the rough and tough of politics. And of course, we're looking at the question of funding more generally.
Look, it's just disgusting, to be honest with you. It's abhorrent. It's not the Australian way, as I said. And people who do this sort of thing should realise that we will be out in force to look for them, we will catch them, we will prosecute them.
Pretty distressed and upset, and given my background, my parents were survivors of the Holocaust, and of course it brings back many distressing and terrible images.
And people really need to get behind the AfD, and otherwise things are going to get very, very much worse in Germany.
Elon Musk urged Germans to vote for the far-right Alternative for Germany Party, or AfD, in an upcoming election, in a conversation with its leader Alice Weidel on a social media platform X that highlighted the U.S. billionaire's growing ambition to sway European politics.
I think Alice Weidel is a very, very reasonable person, and hopefully people can tell just from this conversation, like, nothing outrageous is being proposed.
Musk was doubling down on his endorsement last month of the anti-immigration, anti-Islamic party, labeled as right-wing extremist by German security services, which has caused consternation in Berlin and accusations of undue influence. The AfD has almost no chance of forming a government, despite polling in second place, as other parties refuse to work with it. Still, critics worry that Musk's support for the AfD could further bolster its popularity. His increasingly vocal support for far-right and anti-establishment parties across Europe comes after he used X and his vast wealth to help Republican candidate Donald Trump win the November 5th presidential election in the U.S. Asked by Musk to dispel any concerns that her party might be similar to Hitler's Nazis, Weidel said the genocidal dictator was a communist, whereas hers was a conservative libertarian party.
The biggest success after that terrible era in our history was to label Adolf Hitler as right and conservative. He was exactly the opposite. He wasn't a conservative. He wasn't a libertarian. He was a communist, socialist guy.
Almost all historians agree that Hitler, an eliminationist nationalist, was of the far right. Musk has defended his right to weigh in on German politics because of his significant investments, namely Tesla's first European plant, and has praised the AfD's approach to regulation, taxes, and market deregulation.
Chad's capital, N'Djamena, returned to calm on Thursday, a day after security forces said they foiled an attack on the presidential compound. According to authorities, the 24 assailants were a disorganized band who seemed to be intoxicated. They drove up to the presidential compound wielding knives and machetes, they said. The group then feigned a breakdown and attacked security guards at the gate. During the conflict, 2 guards were killed and 5 others were wounded. The public prosecutor said the security forces killed 18 of the assailants and injured 6. Details of the incident remained unclear, but investigations are underway. The situation was, quote, completely under control, government spokesperson Abdurrahman Koulamala said. The attack came at a delicate time for Chad, which recently scrapped a defense cooperation pact with France. That will end direct French military operations against Islamist militants in the Sahel region.
Hundreds of mourners paid their final respects to Jimmy Carter at Washington National Cathedral on Thursday, a one-term president who was widely admired for his humanitarian work after leaving the White House.
The man had character.
Fellow Democratic President Joe Biden eulogized the 39th president.
Through it all, he showed us how character and faith start with ourselves and then flows to others. To young people, to anyone in search of meaning and purpose, study the power of Jimmy Carter's example.
Jason Carter, one of Jimmy Carter's grandsons, remembered the man he called Pawpaw fondly.
Maybe this is unbelievable to you, but in my 49 years, I never perceived a difference between his public face and his private one. He was the same person no matter who he was with or where he was. And for me, that's the definition of integrity.
All 5 living, current, and former U.S. presidents were in attendance. Before the ceremony began, Republican President-elect Donald Trump entered the cathedral with his wife, Melania. He shook hands with his former Vice President, Mike Pence, before sitting next to former President Barack Obama, with whom he chatted as introductory music played. To Obama's right were Laura and George W. Bush, and Hillary and Bill Clinton. Tens of thousands of Americans over the past 2 days filed through the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol to pay their respects to Carter, who was president from 1977 to 1981. Many mourners hailed him as an example of decency and humility for today's breed of highly partisan politicians.
Venezuela opposition leader Maria Corina Machado was briefly detained, then released after she came out of hiding for the first time in months. That's according to her Vente Venezuela movement on social media. It said she was arrested amid gunshots and that she was forced to film several videos. It happened on Thursday after Machado attended an anti-government rally in Caracas.
I tell you and be clear about this. Here, and here. Venezuela has already decided. Venezuela is free. The regime is over.
Reuters video shows Machado walking among protesters in a black jacket and helmet, escorted by a security guard. It also shows Machado on a motorcycle leaving the demonstration amid a chaotic scene on the street. Machado is being investigated in at least 2 cases, but no warrant for her has been made public. The country's interior minister earlier said her arrest was, quote, an invention, a lie. The opposition are protesting around the country in an 11th hour effort to put pressure on President Nicolas Maduro ahead of his 3rd inauguration on Friday. Both the opposition and the ruling party claim to have won last year's presidential election. Venezuela's electoral authority and top courts say Maduro won, though they have never published detailed tallies. The ruling party held rival demonstrations nationwide. Machado's ally, former presidential candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, has repeatedly promised to return to Venezuela ahead of Maduro's inauguration on Friday. The government has accused the opposition of fomenting fascist plots against it and has said it will arrest Gonzalez should he return.
Lebanon's parliament elected army chief Joseph Ayoun as the country's new president on Thursday. The move elevates a general who enjoys U.S. approval and underscores the diminished sway of the Iran-backed Hezbollah group following more than a year of devastating war with Israel. And it reflects a broader shift in the balance of power not just within Lebanon, but across the wider Middle East, where Tehran has seen its allies dwindle, including last month's toppling of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Lebanon's presidency is reserved for a Maronite Christian in the country's sectarian power-sharing system. Deeply divided factions have meant the post has been vacant since 2022. Ayoun has been commander of the U.S.-backed Lebanese army since 2017. On his watch, U.S. aid continued to flow to the army, part of a long-standing U.S. policy focusing on supporting state institutions to curb Hezbollah's influence. Ayoun has a key role in shoring up a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, which was brokered by Washington and Paris in November. Lebanon has been desperately seeking international aid following a devastating war between Israel and Hezbollah that escalated last summer and fall. That violence came on the heels of a financial collapse in 2019, which the World Bank estimates cost the country $8.5 billion. That need and the shift in power has revived Saudi influence in the country. A source close to the Saudi royal court said U.S., French, and Saudi envoys had told Lebanon's parliament speaker that international financial aid hinged on Ayoun's election. Lebanon's system of government requires the new president to convene consultations with lawmakers to nominate a Sunni Muslim prime minister to form a new cabinet, a process that can often be protracted as factions barter over ministerial portfolios.
Donald Trump says he wants to make Greenland a part of the United States, and he has not ruled out using military force.
It might be that you'll have to do something.
So how likely is he to succeed? Back in 2019, US President-elect Trump brought up the idea of buying Greenland from Denmark, but they turned him down. The Arctic island holds strategic significance for the US military. The shortest route from Europe to North America runs through Greenland. It's also rich in minerals, oil, and natural gas. Environmental concerns have led to bans on oil and gas extraction, and the mining sector faces resistance from indigenous communities. When asked about Trump's renewed interest, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen emphasized the importance of close US cooperation, but said that, quote, only Greenland can determine and define Greenland's future. Greenland's Prime Minister Mette has repeatedly said that the island is not for sale. and that it's up to its people to decide their future. Legally, Greenland is subject to the Danish constitution. Any changes to its status would require a constitutional amendment. In 2009, it was granted broad self-governing autonomy. That includes the right to declare independence from Denmark through a referendum. In recent years, Greenland's independence movement has gained momentum. Since 2019, Greenlandic politicians have expressed interest in strengthening trade and cooperation with the US. If the island were to break away from Denmark, it could choose to align itself with the United States. While most Greenlanders support the idea of independence, they remain divided on its timing and potential economic impact. Trump didn't rule out using military or economic measures to take over Greenland. These remarks have sparked international concern. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot dismissed the likelihood of a US invasion. But he added that the European Union would not tolerate any violation of its sovereign borders.
Two massive wildfires menacing Los Angeles burned into a third night on Thursday. Officials say fierce winds have eased, however, giving firefighters a chance to bat back the flames. The Palisades and Eaton fires, which have formed a pincer around Los Angeles, already rank as the most destructive in the city's history. They have torched a combined 34,000 acres and nearly 10,000 homes and other structures, turning entire neighborhoods to ash. By Thursday morning, the smoke had cleared in some areas, allowing Reuters to capture the scale of the devastation. Walking through the upscale Pacific Palisades neighborhood, Reuters crossed paths with private security guard Bilal Touki, a lone figure amid the scorched remains of homes and cars. Touki has stood watch outside his employer's damaged house since Wednesday. He said the scenes of destruction reminded him of Afghanistan, his home country.
It's hard to explain. I mean, like 2-3 days ago, it was beautiful, it was nice, but today, it's something, you know, all smoky, it's all burned out, and you could see all the burned cars, and you see like there's no houses and stuff like that. It reminds me back to like Afghanistan. So it was pretty tragic, like pretty bad.
Several people have been declared dead in the fires, and Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert Luna said he expected the number to grow, but wanted to wait to pronounce an exact number until it was safe for human remains detection teams to conduct house-to-house searches. President Joe Biden promised on Thursday that the federal government would reimburse 100% of the recovery for the next 180 days.
I told the governor and local officials, spare no expense to do what they need to do and contain these fires.
A total of 5 wildfires burned in Los Angeles County on Thursday. As evening set in, the skies buzzed with aircraft dropping retardant and water on the flaming hills. Los Angeles County's fire chief said the Eaton fire's growth has been significantly stopped, though it remains 0% contained. And while still strong, winds have let up since the 100-mile-per-hour gusts seen earlier in the week. That has permitted crucial aerial support for crews on the ground. But officials warned that the wind was forecast to intensify again overnight. Red flag conditions were expected until Friday afternoon.
The worst wildfires in Los Angeles history are burning uncontained. On Thursday, flames continued to tear through the Pacific Palisades neighborhood, home to many celebrities. The massive wildfire there, together with the Eaton fire to the east, has destroyed hundreds of homes, consuming some 28,000 acres of land. That's larger than the size of Disney World. The two fires formed a pincer around the city so enormous that it was visible from space. Several people have been killed, and the death toll is expected to rise. Nearly 180,000 people have been ordered to evacuate. LA Fire Chief Kristen Crowley on Thursday told reporters wind gusts of up to 60 miles per hour are working against their efforts.
Damage assessments are ongoing at the Palisades fire. However, preliminary reports estimate the damaged or destroyed structures to be in the thousands. It is safe to say that the Palisades fire is one of the most destructive natural disasters in the history of Los Angeles.
I just had to see it with my own eyes to believe it.
Pacific Palisades resident Oliver Alnott said his home, as well as his parents' home, were burnt to a crisp.
The imagery of this is next level. It's shocking. I mean, I was down to my knees when I got up to my parents' house with just sheer amazement at what I was looking at, which was basically just a chimney stack and a pile of ash. I mean, it's something out of a movie.
Firefighters managed to make gains overnight in battling the Sunset Fire, which had forced mandatory evacuations in Hollywood and the Hollywood Hills. LA Mayor Karen Bass.
This is absolutely an unprecedented historic firestorm, but we are all hands on deck.
Bass has faced criticism over whether she was adequately prepared for the fires. She told reporters on Thursday that her focus right now was on protecting people and that the city would evaluate the response's effectiveness after the crisis is over.
They're the most destructive wildfires ever seen in Los Angeles, and that has insurance companies braced for a big hit. JP Morgan on Thursday estimated losses to the sector could hit $20 billion. That's double its estimate from just a day before. Ratings agency Moody's also puts the probable losses in the billions of dollars. It says the number is inflated by the way the fires hit neighborhoods like Pacific Palisades and Malibu, which are full of high-value homes. But experts say many properties may not be covered by fire insurance. Homeowners have found it increasingly hard to buy cover in disaster-prone states, with many insurers pulling out of the market. In California, regulators had until recently capped prices for insurance. That limited annual increases, but led many providers to flee the state, saying they couldn't make a profit there. Now the wildfire disaster is set to make the problem worse, with premiums likely to soar and more companies refusing to provide cover at all. One expert said it would be hard to offer affordable policies in hard-hit areas like Pacific Palisades, which would remain at high risk of future fires. History shows what can happen. In hurricane-prone areas like Louisiana and Florida, insurance premiums more than doubled following big storms in recent years. On Thursday, Germany's Munich Re, the world's largest reinsurer, said insurers saw losses from natural disasters hit $140 billion in 2024, one of the highest numbers on record. It said climate change was among the factors, with higher temperatures driving more extreme weather events. 2025 is already off to a terrible start.
The devastation out there is catastrophic in California. Thousands of houses, schools, businesses burned to the ground. Communities wiped out, lives lost, families forever changed. They're the worst fires to ever hit Los Angeles, ever. So today I'm announcing that the federal government will cover 100% of the cost for 180 days. This is going to pay for things like debris and hazard material removal, temporary shelters, first responders' salaries, and all necessary measures to protect life and property. And folks, I want to underscore, I told the governor and local officials, spare no expense to do what they need to do and contain these fires and in their communities that are really been devastating.
I'm leaving this office very shortly, but it's not about the politics. It's about giving people some sense of security that we're going to be able to get this under control, but it's going to take time. And it's going to take time. And like I said, in the next little bit, we're going to be going back to Congress asking for some more help on some of this stuff. And I hope they're ready to step up because we can afford it. And like I said, we have a little infrastructure bill that's over $1 trillion. It's going to be able to help a little bit.
An official Palestinian tally of direct deaths in the Israel-Hamas war likely undercounted the number of fatalities by tens of thousands as the Gaza Strip's healthcare infrastructure unraveled. That's according to a peer-reviewed study published in the Lancet Medical Journal on Thursday. Researchers estimated there were 64,260 deaths due to traumatic injury from Israel's air and ground campaign in Gaza in the first 9 months of the war, from October 2023 to the end of June 2024. That figure is 41% higher than the official Palestinian Health Ministry count for the time. The Lancet study said nearly 60% of those killed were women, children, and people over 65. It did not provide an estimate of how many Palestinian combatants were among the dead. The Lancet study said the Palestinian Health Ministry had maintained reliable electronic death records, but its capacity to do so deteriorated under Israel's military campaign, which has included raids on hospitals and other healthcare facilities and disruptions to digital communications. Israel says it goes to great lengths to avoid civilian deaths and accuses Hamas of using hospitals as cover for its operations, which the militant group denies. The war began on October 7, 2023, after Hamas gunmen stormed across the border with Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking more than 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Palestinian health officials currently put the death toll of the conflict at more than 46,000 people. The Lancet study was conducted by academics at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, Yale University, and other institutions. Anecdotal reports suggested a significant number of dead lay under the rubble of Gaza and therefore were missing from tallies. So using data from at least 2 independent sources, researchers looked for individuals who appeared on multiple lists of those killed. This method, called capture-recapture analysis, has been used to evaluate deaths in other conflict zones. Less overlap between lists suggests more deaths have gone unrecorded, information that can be used to estimate the actual toll.